Good evening. Our top focus story on the broadcast is Taliban in control of Afghanistan. Now also Kabul. Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani is to step down and hand over power to Ali Ahmad Jalali, interim caretaker head of Afghanistan. The Taliban has now issued a formal statement promising they will not take Kabul by force. Taliban's deputy leader Mullah Baradar is in Kabul to negotiate transfer of power. Now, Taliban issued a statement saying they are on the outskirts of Kabul. They've surrounded Kabul, but they will not enter Kabul and take control by force. They will wait. They will wait for Ashraf Ghani to step down and hand over power. And power is being handed over to an interim administration to be led by Ali Ahmad Jalali. He, of course, is a US citizen, a former diplomat in Afghanistan, has also been a former army officer in Afghanistan. But Ali Ahmad Jalali is the person who will head the interim administration. Now, this is the time that Ashraf Ghani and others will hand over power, perhaps leave or remain. That remains to be seen. Then the interim administration will take control and perhaps by and by hand it over to the Taliban regime. And on your screens at this point of time, we will show you images of chaos and fear on the streets of Kabul. Taliban all set to occupy the seat of power in Kabul, and there is panic and desperation. Look at these images. Hear what people are saying. There are long traffic jams since afternoon because people are desperately trying to escape. They've rushed to ATMs. They're trying to withdraw money. They're trying to stock up, and they're trying to get to safety, especially women. Look at these images on your television screen. Long traffic jams, massive traffic jams. People actually, and it's actually painful when you hear some of the voices that are filtering out. People want their families out of harm's way. They want their daughters, their women out of, as some say, the clutches of the Taliban. Already there are reports from other parts of Afghanistan in Taliban control that girls over the age of 12, women under the age of 45, including in case they are widows, they are being forcibly married off to Taliban fighters. There is another iconic image, and this perhaps shows you America's loss in Afghanistan. Take a look at these two images on your television screen. The first image is of 1975. That is where US lost in Vietnam. These are iconic images of Saigon. Again, the American embassy had to be evacuated by air. The second image in 2021 in Kabul, just earlier today, US Marine choppers, the Chinook helicopters, they had to evacuate diplomats and staff of the American embassy in Kabul, and they've all been taken to the Kabul air base. You have 3,000 American soldiers who are already deployed there, protecting it. They will now fly the diplomats, staffers and others out, perhaps to Qatar, to Doha first and then subsequently. But as of now, there's an air bridge that is being established between Kabul and Doha. Joining me on India First is Ambassador Vivek Kajju, our former ambassador in Afghanistan, also former secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, and Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, former Ladakh Corps commander, someone who studies this area very closely. Ambassador Kajju, did you expect Kabul to collapse the way it did? What happens to Ashraf Ghani now in your appreciation over the next several hours and days?
Where is Ashraf Ghani? I think no one really knows. Is he at all in Afghanistan as we speak? That is a question mark
Sir,
in many minds.
he's just addressed a press conference at the presidential palace saying that he's trying to
When?
prevent further bloodshed.
When?
A short while. I mean, they just said some time back.
No, sometime means what? I'm sorry, I'm raising a question. You can address a press conference and leave. So as of today, let us not assume that he is in Afghanistan. He well may be, but I've heard reports, credible reports from senior Afghan people, personalities, that he well may not be in Afghanistan as we speak. In any case, there is a collapse of the Ghani administration, and now the ritual of a Taliban taking over power has to take place. Its mechanics is still not very clear, but clearly they will form an administration. They want to do it peacefully. I suspect that the Pakistanis, the Chinese, and the Russians want them to take over power peacefully, because that would maintain international legitimacy. They are also very careful in not taking on the Americans, as they haven't taken them on in any combat after the deal, the US Taliban deal was signed on February 29th last year. So this is the republic has collapsed. Let's face it. There is no republic today. The scenes that you've been showing on your television regarding the capital of Afghanistan are there for everyone to see.
Yes.
So now the only question is, how will the Taliban enter? What will they do? Will they co-opt others in the administration? Certainly, I'm clear in my own mind that they will not allow anyone else to have a participation in any of the security sector institutions of Afghanistan. So that is what the situation is.
Okay.
And you mentioned, Gaurav, about the collapse of the Afghan army. There is a peculiar way of fighting war in Afghanistan. War fighting in Afghanistan is fairly unique. I haven't known of great pitched battles of, the kind of cities being sieged and defended. All that is not part of the Afghan tradition. And I think military observers, with due deference to General Sharma, I think military observers all over the world thought that war fighting in Afghanistan is like anywhere else. I recollect I was at a webinar some time back and I mentioned that war fighting in Afghanistan is different, and our military colleagues told me, no, it's much the same all over. But this is the truth for anyone who knows Afghanistan.
They do deals behind the back.
Well, they do deals, money passes, and if one side finds that it is, fighting will be in vain, then they hand over things peacefully. Some safe passages are given, some not. That is the confusion of war. And one last point. You mentioned that an interim administration with Jalali will form. Now, Jalali is a gentleman for whom I have enormous respect. I've known him from my time as ambassador in Kabul. He was the Minister of Interior, a man of great ability.
Yes.
I've met him on track 2 processes thereafter for over many years. I'm not sure whether there'll actually be an interim administration, whether the Taliban, after the kind of success they've reached, will want Jalali to head it. So I think there is a degree of confusion there, and we'll just have to wait and watch what the next hours, certainly 24 to 36 hours, will clarify the situation.
It indeed will, because the manner in which, the speed at which, it's almost like a blitz, the way Taliban came. And they didn't come in huge tanks and there was no cavalry charge. They came on motorcycles. And, General Sharma, there was absolutely no resistance whatsoever. And any company commander, any platoon commander could have sighted 2 machine gun nests and halted the advance should they have wanted it. It seems that this was a done deal. 7 corps, 300,000 strong Afghan army just gave up. Why would that happen?
Thank you, Gaurav, and happy Independence Day.
And to you, sir.
We say there's about 3 lakh soldiers that they had in the Afghan National Army. My figures are about 1,80,000 the army and about 1,20,000 of the police. Now, the way the Americans went about training them was more linked towards counter-terrorist operations, which are 2 different things altogether. So the quality of training and whether they made plans for many other issues of creating the force. When you say that there were 7 corps, a corps is about 2 to 3 brigades. So you can't link about a corps which we have in India or in Pakistan or in the United States. This is more like a curtailed division. So the names are very high-flown corps, etc., but they were not of this kind. They do not have artillery of the kind of authorizations we have. So the fact of the matter is that this was a trained force, but a trained force with tribal loyalties, but largely trained to do counter-terrorist operations. They were not prepared for the onslaughts they get. The onslaught can come in motorcycles, or whichever manner, but they were not trained for it. And secondly, I would also say that probably there was an unwritten diktat given out saying that there should not be civilian casualties. So either the soldiers melted away or joined Taliban or went across to Uzbekistan or whichever way it happened, but there weren't large number of civilian casualties in all the 5 major cities that Afghanistan has lost in the course of last week or so. So the fact of the matter is that it seemed, if it was not rigged, it seemed that everything was rigged, planned in a manner that there should be quietly hand over of powers to the Taliban because the armed forces
was that
prepared.
Always the agreement, hand over power? But handing over power also means that Taliban now have access to all the American weapons, the hundreds of Humvees and rocket launchers and other weapons in all the armories of these formations. But before I come to that aspect, for a moment, I want to take you down to Kabul. Look at the humanitarian crisis on the streets of Kabul.